All right, guys, what's happening? What's happening? It is Friday, August 13th. That's right. You heard it here first. It is Friday the 13th. This morning, we're going to talk about being all in on your values, being all in on the things that you stand for, why it is so important for you to be all in on the things that you stand for, what happens when you wiggle a little bit on those things, kind of the things that go sideways in your life. They generally tie back to your inability to stay true to being all in on the things that you stand for. We're going to talk about that this morning. Let's get started. It is ultimately important for you to look at your goals, truly what you want to do in your life, and then look at the people who you spend the most time with in your life and figure out if that lines up. All right, what's happening, guys? Happy Friday to you. Glad you guys are here with me. Sorry for that. My phone was going off a little bit there. But I wanted to get started this morning, guys, talking about and just wrapping up this series on values, on unity, just the idea of everything that we've got going on in the world. And I want to talk about what happens if you waver on those things, and then talk about the opposite, which is what happens when you go all in on these things. And it is one of the single most important things that I see people not doing correctly, to be honest, in the world, is that they actually are afraid to stand up for what they believe. They are actually afraid to stand for something. And I just want to be upfront and say this, guys, that just because you stand for or against something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are right and somebody else is wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you have to dislike somebody that disagrees with you. But what it does mean is that you have to create an identity for yourself. You have to create what it is that you're going to stand for. And you got to stick to that, man. You got to stick to it, especially when it is uncomfortable. And so that's what we're going to unpack this morning. But as always, I want to say good morning to everybody to get started here. Ed, what's happening, man? Good morning. Is that a good morning sunshine, man? I'm not sure what that emoji means, but I dig it if that's what you're going with there. John, what's happening, man? Vicky, good morning to you. Trudy, Scott Rhodes, Daniel Good, Carla, good morning to you guys, and thanks for being here. So this idea of going all in on your values, going all in on what you stand for, going all in and not wavering on those things that you believe, I think it's one of the single biggest shifts that people can have in their life when they just get comfortable being who it is that they are. And I think that so many people, man, struggle with standing for something and being okay if somebody doesn't like you or somebody doesn't like your opinion. And I think, how it is in the world today with, let's call it cancel culture or whatever you guys want to refer to it as, this idea of opposing views really trying to harm you in your life, is scaring a lot of people, and it's making people not stand for what they believe in. And I wanted to share with you guys this morning just my thoughts on that, because I think that it is so important. And for anybody who, is close to me, whether, you work with me or we're business partners, or, maybe I've helped you in some way, or I've communicated with you. Anybody that's close to me knows this, that I will stand for what I believe in. And it doesn't matter what it costs me. It doesn't matter what I have to go through to stand for it. I believe what I believe, and it is no question the most important thing for me in my life is to stand by the values and the principles that I believe. And I believe that it is imperative for us to stand on those values, especially when it's going to cost us money, especially when it's in the face of adversity, especially when it's against adversity that is extremely uncomfortable. It is the most important time for you to stand by those values and those things that you stand for. And in this world today, guys, I want you to look around you this week and this weekend and going into next week, and I want you to analyze how many people say that they stand for something, but the minute that it gets uncomfortable, they want to retreat. And I'll tell you, that means that those people don't stand for anything. And if you don't stand for something, as my buddy Keith Calloway Jr. says, you will fall for anything. And so when it comes down to it, guys, this life, we make it far more complicated than it really is. If you stand for something and that something costs you money, or it costs you time, or it costs you frustration or difficulty, there are massive lessons and there's massive perspective in those moments where you don't win, where things don't go your way, where things don't turn out the way that you would have hoped. There are massive lessons and massive shifts that happen in your life when you stand by the values and the principles that you are all about. And I'm telling you, I see so many people that say one thing and they have values except when it's inconvenient. And what that means is that they don't have values at all. They are telling themselves a story, but they don't actually stand for what it is that they say. And I think, by the way, I think we're all guilty of that. At some point in our life or some situations, we all have contradictions. But when it comes to your values, if you have a contradiction when it comes to your values, you don't have values at all. And you don't stand for anything. You just claim to. And so I want you guys to think about that in your own life. What is it that you want to stand for? What is it that you will not tolerate in your life? What is it that you will not tolerate in your business? And by the way, when people violate these things, it doesn't mean that they're bad people. Doesn't mean that they're bad people. It means that you can't tolerate it in your own life. You can love them. You can wish them well. But it means that you can't tolerate it. And it doesn't matter what you have to go through in the process of not tolerating it. Whatever it is that you have to go through. Think about the example that you set when you stand up to those things that are wrong. When you are not willing to cave in the face of adversity. What does it say to your children? What does it say to the people around you? What does it say to your team? What does it say to those people that might work for you if you're a leader? It creates trust. It creates stability. It creates confidence. It creates self-confidence, right? But you got to be all in, guys, when it comes to your values. You have to be all in, not flexible. That's not flexible is not a set of values. Core values in a company are non-negotiables. Core values in your life should be non-negotiables. When you get married, they don't ask you if you'll be true to your spouse most of the time. If you will honor him or her most of the time. They say all the days of your life. You have to be all in, guys. If you're not all in, that's the first problem that you need to fix in your life. If you're not all in on the things that you believe and you're not comfortable, listen, if you want to get really happy in your life, stand for things and don't flex. And when you are done looking around at all the people that left because you stood for something, you'll have the right people around you. I promise you. I promise you. I am blessed, man, to be surrounded by people personally, professionally, in top contractor school that all have incredible principles that they have no hesitation to defend. And when somebody in the group violates those principles, everybody stands up and says, no, that's not how it's going to be. Because remember, guys, your identity is tied to what you tolerate. It's tied to what you allow. It's tied to what you let happen around you that you might turn a blind eye to instead of saying something about. That is if you turn a blind eye to something that's wrong and you don't do something about it, you might as well encourage it. So when it comes to these things that are happening in our world, the things that we've talked about all week, right? Whether it's our freedom, whether it's something you believe, whether it's something with somebody that is doing something in your life or in your company or somewhere that you don't agree with, you have to be willing to embrace the conflict that comes along with that and stand up for what it is that you believe. If you don't, I promise you this, the result is simple. You will become less confident, less happy, less fulfilled. You will start to trust yourself less because you're not being a true person. And when you look in the mirror, the person that looks back at you knows everything. So if you struggle with self-confidence, if you struggle with, there's a million things that people struggle with, self-confidence, anxiety, depression, all these things. I believe that this plays a major role in all of it. Being true to yourself, standing up for what you believe in. Integrity, as Ryan Austin just said. Shifting values, Matt, absolutely destroy your integrity. You can't, there's no shifting values as an oxymoron. You can't have shifting values. They have to be firm and stable and predictable. People have to know if you're a leader in the world, in your family, in your business, you have to be predictable. You ever see how people just they just kind of are naturally attracted to people they can depend on, people that are predictable? And people don't like to be around those people that are unpredictable, that don't do what they say they're going to do, that aren't reliable, that don't deliver on the promises that they make. Values matter, guys. What you stand for matters. It becomes literally, I say this all the time, but it's no big deal. It's just your life. It's just your legacy. It's just how people will remember you. So if you choose not to show up today, if you choose to turn a blind eye to something that, somebody does that's not right, if you don't speak out when stuff is not correct, it's no big deal. It's just your life. No big deal. It's just your legacy. It's no big deal. It's just how your kids will view you. It's no big deal. It's just how everybody at work views you. Think about it. This is your life, guys. It is serious. So staying firm on your values, especially in the face of adversity, is the way that we set a standard in our lives to live by. And that standard is where we go to regardless of how bad the day gets, regardless of how we feel in that moment. The standard is the standard. The values that we set, the things that we decide we're going to stand for, they cannot be flexible. Those core values that you live by in your life are the most important thing for your self-confidence, your identity, the trust that people place in you, the stability that you have for other people to be able to depend on you. Matt, I couldn't agree more, man. Anchor yourself in biblical perspective, 100% rock solid. It is the standard. When you stabilize these values, when you stabilize what it is that you believe in the most, what is at your core, you can build from that foundation. You can build something massive from that foundation. If you don't believe, if you don't act out the things that you believe in, you will lose self-confidence. It will erode, and your life will be less fulfilling, less enjoyable. You'll be less successful. You'll have less friends. You'll have a lot of drama. But the other option is easier than you think. Just don't waver and be okay. And when you lean into that good book that Matt Johnson just mentioned, when you understand that, that you are backed by a great, great God that put you here for a reason, to do something great with your life. So it doesn't matter what people think of you in the moment. In the long term, you will be viewed properly. People may not like it in the moment. You might get attacked. You might be told all kinds of things about yourself. But long term, your legacy will be accurate. Your legacy will be accurate. I went to the Entree Leadership Conference a few months ago, and I listened to George W. Bush give a speech, and they asked him about the criticism he received when he was the president. And he said this. He said, I never worried too much about the criticism I was receiving when I was the president. I worried about standing on the values and principles that I knew to be right, and I knew that history would correct anything that was wrong, that my legacy would stand for exactly what it should, that I made decisions based on the values and principles that I stood by, and time would correct any wrong. And I thought, man, what a powerful message. So I ask you guys to think about that today. Do you stand by those values, by those principles that you believe in, regardless of the circumstances? Because if you don't, because you're afraid in that moment or you're nervous in that moment, I promise you that history will always be kind to you. And if you give people enough time, they will figure out where your heart was. Whatever they're angry about in the moment will go away over time. Whatever may seem like a terrible situation in the moment, it will work itself out. It's the greatest thing about life. If you make the right decisions, you try to make as many right decisions as you can, time will always be kind to you. You may not win every single time you should, but over a long period of time, making the right decisions, standing by the values and going all in on them, you will 100% build a life that you are proud of, that you can stand on, that delivers things to you and your family that you could never dream of. That's my message for today, guys. It's Friday. You know what I always say, man, go out like a lion. Don't go out like a mouse. Everybody wants to take off early on Fridays. Everybody wants to, wants to go easy, wants to blow off the afternoon, wants to sit at their desk and scroll through Facebook or scroll through Amazon or scroll through whatever hobby you have of looking at stuff. Those that go hard on Fridays and play to the whistle, man, those are the winners. No question. So go out like a lion. Don't go out like a mouse today. Wishing you guys an amazing Friday. Thank you all for being here. If you found value in this, please share it out to your friends. Share it out to your Facebook wall. If you're listening on the podcast, click that copy link button and send it to somebody. Send it via text, DM, whatever you got to do. And please, please, please go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever, and leave me a review if you would. I would appreciate it, guys. Wishing you all an amazing Friday, and I will see you guys Monday morning, same place, same time, right here on Morning Perspective. Love you guys.